So, you all finished him? Good job. Your IWA is turned in, you presented your IRR, and you sat through the end of the year exam. Give yourselves a nice pat on the back. But now, it's time to really get cooking. Fortunately, your journey isn't over quite yet. You're only halfway there. That, however, is some good news. Before this year is over, there are two things you need to understand to succeed in AP research: responsibilities and expectations. Let's get started. This class is designed for you to conduct, plan, and report your own original research. You can really dig and dive in. This can be in any field you choose and find intriguing, in such various topics as phantom limb pain, prisons and fraternity culture, and iconic things like borders. I know, it sounds like a daunting task, but do not worry, I'm here to guide you the whole way. Do you remember this good old boy, Quest? Well, he's back, and he's here to stay. In research, the foundation of your work will be built on this process. Your own original research will lead to a final academic paper that is 4,000 to 5,000 words, and 75% of your overall score. But don't fret, you're in good luck. This paper is just like the IWA, plus a little bit more. And I can promise you that the new portion of the academic paper is what really makes research. You will have to plan and conduct a method based on your literature review, which is like the new IWA. This could be anything from building a model based on termite mounds, to critically analyzing Big Hero 6 based on literary theory, to something innovative like survey. Well, I know you like acronyms, so here's a good one for how your paper should go. A lit, meth, ran, co-B. Abstract, your paper. Literature review, your overview of the field and gap in research. Methods, what you are doing that's actually research and how you are doing it. Results, data, graphs, and charts, all the good stuff. Analysis, discussing what those nifty results mean and how they connect back to your initial research inquiry. Conclusions, wrap it up, boys. Explain the implications of the overall field, future areas that can be researched, and those limitations. Let me tell you, this is the time to really impress your reader. Bibliography, citations in the correct style for your field. A lit, meth, ran, Kobe. Don't forget it. Now this is where things get crazy. Do you remember how much of your final AP score the academic paper is? Well, the other 25% is a presentation in oral defense, the POD. This presentation will be a summary of your paper and overall research process, and 3 oral defense questions, all totaling in 15 to 20 minutes. Well, these 2 tasks are all you have to do, but I know that can seem like a lot to handle. So let's just jump in right into the second main thing you need to understand to succeed: expectations. Let's think about the beginning of this class. So, you sit down in Mr. Clacky's room. I know, sad. And think to yourself, how can I really succeed and set myself up for college? Well, let me tell you, the first few months of this class are going to be the most vital. This is when you can, emphasis on can, define what you are researching and if your research is original and relevant. Think of it this way. If your AP research project was like a tiny little acorn, and the whole class in your life were the forces of entropy seeking to destroy everything you have sought to build up in this existence, then the gap in your research and literature review would be the soil, water, and sunlight that nourish your plant unto fruition. Your gap and the literature lay the groundwork for your entire project, because a seed, as you know, is planted in the ground. A proper and feasible gap leads to good research surrounding that gap. And then, like that hopeless little acorn, you fill the gap, and then you grow into a tree!
A tree?
Sunlight and water, gap, plus soil, literature review, equals tree, effective research. The question is, how do I find a topic to research in an area to establish as a gap? Well, let's find out together. Here we are, in the vast expanse of all knowledge in the universe.
How do we find what is out there? One good place to start is in EBSCOhost, or any database of peer-reviewed academic papers. If you can find a credible database specifically for your field, that's even better. Then, search the database like you did in seminar and start reading. This is a good way to find more specific topics within large fields like the humanities or medicine, and you know, it's bound to be expert. If you need to get some creative brain juices flowing, taking a good look at news sites like The Atlantic can help. But be careful though. Using news sources in your final paper is kinda unprofessional and can lead to overgeneralization. Lastly, a friend of Mr. Clackey once said, "Specialized encyclopedias found in college libraries are like fountains springing unto knowledge eternal." Written by experts in the field, these sources can often be found in the reference or your field section and provide information on hot topics within the current field.
Now let's look at the rubric for the academic paper. Look at the column for a score of 5. A 5 is a rich analysis of a new understanding addressing a gap in the research base. Intriguing. It sounds to me like the gap and the literature review are pretty essential, but look with me at each of the rows for a score of 5. The first two are the only two which are really about the gap and lit review. Focuses on a topic of inquiry and connects the topic with relevant scholarly works. Let's keep reading. Logically defends the relationship between the method and purpose of inquiry, justifies a new understanding with implications and limitations, uses effective design elements, cites and attributes sources properly. Now that we have looked at College Board's mandate, it does not seem like this part of research is important at all to the academic paper. What a conundrum. But if you look more closely, you will see that all but the last 2 points are related to the gap and literature review. If you don't have an inquiry, you can't connect the method with the rest of the inquiry process. If you don't have an inquiry, you can't make sure your new understanding is actually new. I can promise you that the lit review and gap together are the single most important thing you will do all year, period. If you are able to do anything and do it early, make sure your research is actually an original, unexplored topic and that you have plenty of scholarly evidence to back it up. Do whatever is necessary to grow your tree.
I bet you're thinking to yourself right now, well, this sounds all fine and dandy, but I don't think I'm really up to this task, or care at all. Let me tell you, research is an adventure, and any good hero venturing out into the wide world needs a trusty partner, like a wizard, squire, or a yodeling monk. You can make sure you save that princess or defeat that dragon when you have a companion, also known as a professional mentor. Through the power of email and the cellular device, you can acquire an intrepid expert in your research field. Though they definitely can't do your work for you, an expert advisor can help you sort through sources in the literature, make sure your gap is actually a gap, help you find an appropriate and feasible method, peer review your paper, and much, much more. When you need some expertise, find an expert. The research method, actually researching things. This one is hard to go over because there is so much diversity in what method you can choose based on your topic. Let's think back to the acorn and tree symbol. Close your eyes. Think of a forest. There are a lot of trees, aren't there? When your acorn or your seed of any kind grows into a tree, it is going to be different than all of the other existing trees. It is unique. It is individual. And this is called a new understanding. But a seed like an acorn cannot turn into a peach tree or a mangrove. That's just silly. An acorn can only turn into an oak tree. Just the same way your research topic and gap can only grow into a method that fits. Now, let's take a look at the rubric.
Look at row 3 for all scores, starting with 4 and 5. Logically defends the alignment of a detailed, replicable research method to the purpose of the inquiry. For 3, a replicable research method with questionable alignment. And for 2, an oversimplified, or non-replicable method with questionable alignment. And let's not even talk about the 1. You should never do that. That's just not having a method at all.
So, the main distinction between a low and sufficient paper is being able to reproduce the research. The reader should be able to understand your method and could even do it themselves. And then high-level papers are defined by alignment. If the reader can't understand why you chose your method and how it connects to the purpose, you're doing it wrong. Don't forget, just like with the lit review and gap in research, all of the academic paper which follows the method section is based on it. So much more of the rubric is based on this point than you might at first think. The big wow points like the implications, future research, and limitations won't be wow-tastic if the research you conduct is not wow-tastic, as well as connected to your research inquiry. Once you've gotten this far in the year, you should be pretty proud of yourself. You'll say, I am a happy and successful researcher. But just wait a second, future you haven't done your IRB yet. Reality check! An IRB is an institutional review board, IRB, which means a panel of experts gets to hear all of your research and expose all of your flaws. And, as a bonus, if you're doing research involving humans, then they get to find out all of your ethical issues. Bad. But as a wise man named Neil deGrasse Tyson once said, no pain, no gain. The IRB may be challenging and possibly utterly depressing, but it will help you get that clean, finished project at the end of the year. The IRB will help you adjust your method so it aligns with your research inquiry. It can also help you realize if your research inquiry is actually addressing a gap. Just don't forget that all of your dreams and plans may be crushed in the beginning, but hopefully they'll be remade into a glorious end product with a little tenacity on your part.
Now it's April. You should be pretty much done at this point. You finished your paper, it's almost turned in, and you're preparing for your presentation and oral defense. That's also known as the POD. It's the final part of your year-long exam and should be the easiest part. As Mr. Kalaki's friend once said, if you know what you know, then knowing that you can say what you know is easy. In other words, if you've put in the time up until the presentation, giving an overview on what you have done should theoretically be manageable. Just like with the specifics of your research, there isn't much I can tell you about your presentation. Your presentation is tailored to you and what you have done. In general, you'll need some kind of appropriate media and an overview of your paper and the overall research process. Let's take a look at the rubric. Row 1, Research Design. Say what you're doing. Easy points. For many of the high-level presentations, Mr. Clackey may show you later in class, students got those points at the very beginning of their presentations. Many of these students gave an overview of their presentation as their opening that foreshadowed all that row 1 details. Row 2. This one is a bit more complex, establishing your argument. When you present an argument that identifies and explains the consequences and implications, you must explain your literature review, so when you talk about the conclusions of the research, it actually makes sense. And then, you should talk about your analysis section of the paper, your line of reasoning, claims linked with evidence. Row 3, Reflect, your line of reasoning. Connect your evidence with your conclusions and explain how it relates to your hypothesis or research goal. Row 4, Engage audience, good presenting. This is the hard part. When you are creating your presentation, it must be different from your paper. You must be more selective in what you say and how you say it so the presentation is understandable. Finally, the oral defense is simple. Answer 3 questions from the board of reviewers from a set list of questions. Well, gotta bounce.
Well, you've made it. It's the end of the video. It's over. No more. And let me tell you, spending this time together has been phenomenal. Lastly, you've been used to rules, regulations, and restrictions in seminar. All you had were bullet points and guidelines. But let me tell you now, the sky is the limit!